The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language. Mature audiences are cleared to proceed.
Hey, David, you ready for an international assassination plot?
I'm definitely ready for a movie with a whole lot of smoking.
How about chair fights, my man? You like chair fights? Because if you do, I got some good news for you.
Todd, did you know that this is Peter Lorre's first English-speaking role?
I do now. I'm ready for a note hidden in a shaving brush. I'm ready for some surveillance. I'm ready for some tapped phones.
And exactly one more dead French skier than in the 1989's heartwarming Driving Miss Daisy.
David, are we here today to talk about the man who knew too much?
Yes, we are.
Shall we begin? Let's begin.
Following an uncharacteristic pair of back-to-back floppy fluff films, Alfred Hitchcock avows that it's time for him to get back into his melodramatic wheelhouse. He delivers one of his many proto-spy films involving a man or a couple accidentally drawn into a shadowy world of foreign intrigue. He'll remake the movie in 1956 with a nearly identical plot, but a tremendously different flavor and style. I'm Todd.
And I'm Dave, and we're here to talk about spy movies.
And while we will discuss whether or not these qualify as actual spy movies, they're important films in the development of the genre, and as such, we're going to talk about them today on this episode of Spies Like Us.
By the way, this movie's super named wrong. They should have just called it The Man Who Knew One Thing.
That's very true. He does, in both of them, he pretty much just knows one thing. The title apparently came from a book of detective stories that Alfred Hitchcock just happened to have the rights to, and he just liked the title. And it is a good title.
I think it's a great title.
Speaking of the title, when we made our list of spy movies, our Excel spreadsheet that we're constantly adding and updating, when I alphabetized it when I sorted it by alphabetization, it was really surprisingly to me, it really jumped out like how many spy movies start with the word the.
Yeah.
It's like a solid third of them. You know, you've got The Day of the Jackal, The Enemy Within, The Fourth Protocol, The Good Shepherd, The Man Who Knew Too Much, The Jackal. Did I mention? Yeah.
They got the perfect formula. That.
Right, yeah. The something that's something. But I think the reason for that is it's always like it's supposed to give the audience a feel that like they're being like let in on a secret, something that happened, even if it didn't. It's
big enough to use the, so it's something specific, but it's always like a vague word, like the falcon that flew in from China.
Exactly. It gives it a sense of like I'm going to make up a word here. Pivotality.
Yeah.
Like that this was some kind of moment where like things changed, and the movie wants to tell the audience about this thing.
Yeah.
So there's several movies that we considered for this episode, several Hitchcock movies that kind of are all in the same, I don't know, kind of blob of like proto-spy movies. We looked at The Man Who Knew Too Much, which is 1934. We looked at The 39 Steps in 35. The Man Who Knew Too Much remake is in 56, and North by Northwest is in 1959. Why am I mentioning these four movies specifically? Well, during our research, if you look at like what serious film critics, which we're not, have to say,
not at all.
you frequently find The 39 Steps, which is one of Hitchcock's black and white British period films, cited as possibly being the first spy movie, and even being like the first Bond movie. You find other people that say the 1959 North by Northwest, which might be Alfred Hitchcock's best movie ever, as also being the proto prototype of the spy movie. And David, what comes out really soon after 1959?
Well, we get Dr. No, the first Bond film, which was pretty much like our first spy hero in 1962.
I was really surprised during this research. I thought we were going to find a lot more spies as heroes prior to James Bond.
Yeah, that's super weird. Like, apparently, all these movies just made these spies look like these creepy weirdos that are just like peeping toms, the black fedora and the white fedora, and everybody's kind of like in this dark world. So there's no possible way that any of them could be good guys. They're all just like weirdos.
Yeah, it does feel like that. It does feel like the movie makers of the pre-Bond era don't understand that the audience might be able to identify with a spy, and so they throw in these everymen into the spy world instead. And that's why I think we kind of call this the proto-spy genre. We're going to talk a lot more about that at the end of this episode. But between picking from these movies, honestly, I think we went with The Man Who Knew Too Much because, well, it technically does predate the 39 Steps.
Uh-huh.
So, so the two films we are going to talk about, though, The Man Who Knew Too Much, or as
too much,
as David would retitle them, The Man Who Knew like one fucking thing.
Yeah. Yeah, what was weird was like in 56, like the information wasn't as valuable as it was at 34. There was like a date and like a place in 34 and 56. It was like somebody's gonna be killed. Like, it was such a broad piece of information. Like, all right, when, where, who, like, yeah. I think we got a place. I think that was the most specific piece of information. We got like a lead, but I guess that helps more for like the mystery.
I've loved Hitchcock for a long time. I'm not like a super fanboy. I haven't like seen all his films. A lot of them I haven't gone back to and to watch multiple times or anything. But ever since I was first introduced to him by a high school teacher who talked about the opening scene of Rear Window and just how much storytelling is given to you, how much setup of like who Jimmy Stewart is and why he's in a wheelchair is given to you in this long, like, wordless sequence where we're just panning around his room and just seeing some pictures and some magazines and other things, and it all tells a story. And ever since then, I've always really, really enjoyed Alfred Hitchcock stuff. It wasn't until much later that I found out about his pre-Technicolor British period, and that was when I picked up that DVD that I mentioned before. But I really enjoyed those movies. It was the 39 Steps, Young and Strange, I think was the other one. How about you? What's your where do you come in on this from a Hitchcock angle?
Well, I actually haven't seen very much Hitchcock in my, I guess, older years. I mean, I'm not that old, I guess, but I saw a lot. I saw a couple when I was a kid, so I don't really actually have a whole lot of cinematic experience. I mean, I took like a couple film classes at a junior college, and they always showed us these shots that were Hitchcock shots, and they were like, look how amazing this is. But I mean, watching these films really made me appreciate who he was as a filmmaker and the impact he had on film. A lot of those shots were like pretty cool. They really set a lot of the mood. You could probably say a lot of things about the movies as a whole, but there's all these awesome camera angles that really, really set the mood for you.
Oh yeah. No, his camera angles are legendary, and the real legend goes that he never looked through the camera.
Yeah.
He would set everything up, and he would set everything up with such precision that he felt like it's impossible for you to not, for the cameraman to not get this right.
Yeah.
Our remake of The Man Who Knew Too Much is 56,
Right.
North by Northwest is 1959. We're tiptoeing right up to the edge of the Bond era. But notice again, when the first real spy hero, James Bond, comes onto the scene, he's not an American.
No, he's very British.
He's an ally. He's an
Yeah.
ally, so we can consider him a good guy at that point, but
Mhm.
definitely not an American. At some point, we're going to probably see if we can find the first American spy in cinematic history and maybe talk
Oh,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah. But let's get into the man who knew too much.
Voice pattern recognized. Retinal scan complete. Validating security clearance. Clearance granted. You may now enter the briefing room.
1934 version starts out in Switzerland. We start out watching a skiing competition. A skier, Louis Bernard, almost runs over a little girl's dog, and we have kind of a little laugh about it, like a little kerfuffle with the girl's parents, who are our protagonists for the film. That is Jill and Bob Lawrence, and their daughter's name is Betty. And there's another guy that was kind of like in the almost accident, guy named Abbott, who we're going to find out is actually important to the movie, but we're going to talk about him later. After this, we go to a sharpshooting competition, and Jill is a marksman in this movie, and she narrowly loses a contest to a guy named Ramon. Also, we're going to remember that name. When Abbott's watch chimes just at the moment that she's about to take the shot, which I think she should have been more angry about than she is, but she doesn't seem to have a problem with it. They just all laugh it off, and everyone goes to dinner. There's a big party at the chalet. Everyone's in like tuxes and fancy dresses, and Louis Bernard is dancing with Bob's wife when he gets shot. Just before he dies, he whispers to her that there's an important message in his hotel room, and she needs to get it to the British consulate. She tells her husband that. He goes to the hotel room, finds the message. Now, we notice that Ramon, the other sharpshooter, also went straight to the hotel room, apparently trying to find something as well. But Bob gets there first. Ramon tries to, demands, give it to me. So we're not sure exactly what Ramon knows at this point, because he just says, give it to me. But Bob is whisked off by the hotel manager and the Swiss police. While they're being interrogated, someone passes Bob a note letting him know that his daughter's been kidnapped and that he needs to not say anything about anything. He manages to get this information to his wife without letting the police know what's going on, and they clam up. Oh, I should mention exactly what the note says. The message reads Wapping. That's Wapping. Apparently, we'll find out later that's a district in London. And the note says, G. Barbour, make contact A. Hall, March 21st.
That's the first note, not the second note.
Yes, I'm sorry. There are two notes. That's the note that Bob found in the hotel room. Hidden in a brush. Hidden in a brush.
Yeah.
As the audience, we find out that it was Ramon who abducted Betty, and the Lawrences head home. All in all, this is just a 15-minute sequence. It moves along pretty darn fast, and that's Switzerland. So, Dave, let's talk about what's going on underneath the hood in Switzerland.
Well, it looks like that our Louis Bernard wasn't just a skier, as we can tell as he's trying to pass the note to Mrs. Lawrence. And we realize later that Abbott is kind of behind a lot of the assassination plot. So presumably, Abbott was there recruiting Ramon as the shooter, and Louis Bernard was there to intercept the information or as much information as possible about this assassination. So that's mainly, I guess, what's going behind the scenes in Switzerland.
Do we know? Do we actually know yet that there's an assassination plot?
No, we don't.
We just have the contents of the note.
Yeah, we
Okay.
just have the contents of the note. That's right. That's right. But that's pretty much what's going on in Switzerland is a recruitment that we'll later find out for an assassination plot.
Right. Abbott's there to recruit Ramon to be the marksman in for the assassination of whoever. We'll find that out later. Yeah. So what? At first, it wasn't clear to me why do we think there's a note anyways? Do we think that
in the brush, right? Well, I mean, I would say there's probably a couple different reasons. I mean, it's kind of weird that he would just have that kind of information laying around. Only it was actually hidden, so that's one thing. But why he didn't destroy it probably tells us as the audience that he's either going to use it as a dead drop to pass the information over back into headquarters through someone else along the chain, or he's going to leave it there for, and the hotel might be the dead drop for, one of the cleaning people to pick up and pass on to someone down the chain through headquarters.
What's a dead drop, Dave?
Oh, a dead drop is a place that is used to pass information without two people ever having to meet. And it's usually signaled when there is a dead drop available, or there could be like a pre-planned, interval in which the dead drop, the information is placed in a dead drop back and forth between two people. But the point of it is to disconnect two people's communication so that they won't ever be seen together receiving information. So it could be like in a bush somewhere at a park, or like behind a statue somewhere in front of like a government building. So it's always going to be some kind of inconspicuous place that person A is going to leave a piece of information or an item for person B to pick up later.
Right. So, I mean, I was thinking there were two possibilities of the author of the note. One was that maybe someone, like a contact of Louis Bernard's, passed that note to him. But that doesn't hold up too well, because any good spy, which Louis Bernard supposedly is, would just memorize the information and eat the note, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's probably more likely that he wrote the note, and he doesn't want to be seen himself going to the British consul, because sometimes especially in spy movies, when you see someone going to the embassy or the consulate, obviously there's people going in and out of there all the time, but if you're like,
they're all being watched.
Yeah. Like if Louis Bernard, for instance, if he is, they're posing as a skier, like and someone was vaguely suspicious of him, they might see him headed toward the embassy and say, hey, something's going on here. So
why is a skier going to the embassy? Yeah.
Sure. So what I'm thinking is maybe he hid it in his shaving brush, which I guess it's not the hotel's shaving brush, because hotels don't have shaving brushes with secret compartments in them.
No, right.
So I guess
not the last time I checked.
Right. Well, you know what? Actually, I've honestly never checked. Maybe they all do. Maybe
yeah. It's just like a thing.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe he's gonna accidentally when he leaves the next day, which he said he was going to. When he leaves the next day, he's either maybe gonna accidentally leave the shaving brush behind, and maybe it's pre-planned that someone else has infiltrated the cleaning staff and is gonna get the note from there to the British consul, or maybe he's gonna put it in his luggage and kind of, I don't know, at the airport or seaport or whatever, however they got back and forth in these days. I don't think they traveled much by air in 1934.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Switzerland
maybe,
isn't as far away as like Morocco, right?
yeah, maybe someone else picks up his he leaves his luggage at the seaport lobby or something. Someone else picks it up and they surreptitiously take it to the embassy.
I guess they didn't have that rule like they do at the airports now. Don't leave your luggage suspiciously. If you see luggage abandoned, report it immediately.
They didn't give a fuck back then. Okay. So, let's see. We're going to find out later, though, that this does pertain to an assassination plot. And the plot is for Abbott to hire Ramon to shoot the head of state or some kind of high dignitary. I don't think we really find out exactly what their title is, but it's a Frenchman, we're pretty sure, because right, he's referred to later in the film, this is the assassination target, as Monsieur Roper. And the reason I can deduce that that's a French person is because it's an Englishman who refers to him as Monsieur. If you're a French person and you say someone, what you call it, honorific, I don't know what the word for Mr. Mrs. is, as Monsieur, then, you're just being French. But if you're not French and you refer to someone as Monsieur, then I can deduce that the person you're referring to is French. Also, Roper is a name of French origin, turns out.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, no, we don't get a whole lot of information about his position. He's probably like some sort of diplomatic dignitary, some kind of something.
Oh, we should have noticed. Oh, yeah, we need to note that at the initial scene of the skiing accident, almost tragedy, whatever, Abbott and Louis Bernard appear to recognize each other.
Yeah.
So
interesting. I guess it's just a small world of the spy trade. Everybody kind of knows everybody.
Yeah, you're not very good spies if that's true, I guess. But anyways, I mean, minus 5 spy points on Louis Bernard for being made.
Yeah.
And then just going on about his business and just partying with and dancing around with another man's wife and being in a public location. Apparently, he wasn't worried about getting shot, but he really should have been.
Yeah, I know, right? Especially after he was noticed. Like, I would think that he'd be a little bit more on his toes, but cinematically, I think we needed a comical moment, maybe.
So let me explain this real quick because it's a nice little Hitchcock twist kind of thing here. Where so Louis Bernard is cheekily dancing with Jill, and they're making fun of Bob. And actually, it was kind of confusing at first. I couldn't tell, like, who am I supposed to be paying attention to in this scene? First of all, everyone kind of looks the same.
Yeah.
Except for Abbott, who's played by Peter Lorre, very distinctive. And what Bob does in kind of like a little teasy revenge is he attaches a piece of string to Louis' waistcoat button or something, so that, surreptitiously. So while they're dancing, they're slowly getting entangled by the string. And it's when Louis realizes that he, is tangled up in this string. That's the moment he gets caught. And like the cool Hitchcock thing is like he has that moment of realization that he's caught in the web.
I
Right?
see. Yeah. Oh, very clever.
Right.
Very, very clever, Alfred.
But one way or another, the Lawrences head to London, and that's where we're headed next. So our next scene, is in London. It's the home of the Lawrences, and the British police are asking Bob about the whereabouts of his daughter. He doesn't say anything, which, of course, I mean, he lies about it. He says she's like staying with an aunt in Paris or something.
Right.
Yeah. And they leave.
But they do hint at like that they might know that she was kidnapped, and they're kind of trying to trap him into giving more of an answer or something. It sounded like.
Yeah, and in just a moment we're gonna ask why, because it doesn't make sense to me that the English police would have any interest in. I mean, not that they wouldn't be interested if they knew about it, but like, why are they? What's the investigation? What's the motive of the investigation? Why are they? If someone goes, travels abroad, comes home with a daughter, comes back without a daughter, what triggers the British police to say, like, hey, we better send some men over there and find out what's going on here?
Yeah.
But I think a possible clue to that, comes when the police leave, but one man stays behind, and this is Gibson. Gibson is an Englishman who reveals to Bob that he is, what is he? Help me out here. Oh yeah, foreign office. He's of the foreign office.
Yeah, and that Louis Bernard was one of his agents.
Right. And we mentioned the foreign office in the briefing. So Gibson definitely is keyed in that something's wrong here. And he even seems to already know that there is an assassination plot, right?
Well, Gibson is from the Foreign Office, and he kind of seems to know a lot more than the police do. And he kind of also lets the Lawrences know that he knows their daughter's been kidnapped, and that there was a note that Mr. Lawrence had found. And so he pretty much knows quite a bit of the situation other than what was written on the note. So he kind of uses this situation to leverage to try and gain the information about what's on the note. So,
well, actually, I don't think he knows that there's a note. I think he just knows that his asset or his coworker, the agent Louis Bernard, was killed in Switzerland, and the last people that were right with him and hanging out with him were the Lawrences. They've come back without a daughter, right?
Yeah.
He knew that there was an assassination plot. In fact, that's why they sent Louis Bernard to Switzerland, to gather information about it.
Right.
So I guess the fact that they came back without a daughter has triggered his twitchy nose that there might be something related there. I mean, he might be interested in chatting up with the last people that talked to Louis Bernard anyways. But and then when he looks into it and he notices there's a missing daughter involved, now he really wants to know what's going on, right?
Well, yeah. So they basically, it's obvious that Gibson knows quite a bit about the situation. He just wants to know the information that Mr. Lawrence has gained, and basically poses it as a matter of national security. But at this point, there's a phone call that comes in.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me about it.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's a phone call that comes in from the would-be, I guess, kidnappers, and they know that Gibson's at their apartment, and they basically threaten Mr. Lawrence and Mrs. Lawrence to not say a word to Gibson, or their daughter will be killed.
So they must have the Lawrences under surveillance.
Right. And presumably Gibson's being watched. If he's that high ranked in intelligence, somebody's watching him as well.
Well, you can't watch everyone.
You can't watch everyone, right? But
I guess if you knew that, I don't know if it's clear. I don't know if they state that Gibson is like Louis Bernard's boss, But I guess if the villains knew, if that was the case, I guess maybe you would watch Louis Bernard's boss to see how he reacts to the fact that you just offed his agent.
Right. That's true. That's true. But yeah, but the callers basically threaten to harm Betty if they tell them anything about what was written on that note. So here's basically the situation: is this couple's daughter has been kidnapped, and they're being threatened with their daughter's life to not give up information. But British intelligence is claiming this is a matter of national security. We can help you, and we can help get your daughter back. And so they're kind of set up in this moral dilemma, and we kind of have this interesting negotiation or back and forth with the Lawrences and Gibson trying to decide whether to pick national security over their daughter. And as we see, they pick their daughter and believe that they can handle their situation on their own.
Yeah, and that's a formula that I think I mean, I don't know if this is the first movie to use this kind of plot. I kind of suspect it is, but it's definitely not the last.
No.
Where, like, you know, a kidnapped loved one is somehow like the reason that an everyman, or in this case, an every couple, gets kind of drawn into this world of foreign intrigue, blah blah blah, and and the whole like pathos of it is, you know, they want to protect their daughter.
Yes.
They don't want to be involved in this, and they're scared. They don't really know what to do, but they're just going to have to figure it out somehow.
Well, interesting enough is, you know, one of the things Gibson points out is that there was an assassination that was successful in the past that triggered World War I. And it was an assassination, a person that wasn't really that big of a deal, that nobody knew, and that this is a big deal and that they need to stop this assassination because it could trigger something as big as World War I. But, you know, it's, as many stories have been told in this way, the parents of the child are like, yeah, but it's my child, and that has to amount to something, and my child is very important type of situation.
Right. So the stakes are a lot bigger. You mentioned national security a couple times, but the stakes are actually posed here by Gibson as being much larger than that. And let's remember too that in 1934, people are still pretty fucking shooken up about
Right.
World War One. Like, World War One was awful.
Right. Yeah, no, it was pretty bad. And yeah, it was basically an assassination of somebody that wasn't even that big. Well, wasn't he ambassador or something? His brother was actually like the emperor or whatever. He actually wasn't even that big. I mean, like, yeah, he had political position, but it wasn't like he was.
You're talking about Archduke Ferdinand.
Yeah, Archduke Ferdinand. He's an Archduke.
The target of the assassination that is said to have was the first domino in a series of dominoes that precipitated World War I. And yeah, like Gibson says, like nobody knew who that guy was.
Yeah.
nobody knew what could possibly happen as a result of that. And so, you know, Gibson doesn't want that to happen again. And he puts the stakes in Bob's face as being that high. Bob's still got to go with my daughter.
Yeah. Pretty much, you know, which, I mean, it's pretty typical for like a movie, especially for, you know, the everyman watching this movie want to feel like, yeah, we're going to take care of our kids type of situation.
Sure. So here, I want to not forget to mention, like, I think a bit of tradecraft that I detect here. It's not explicitly stated in the movie, but I kind of sniff out. Remember, I was asking, like, why are the London police asking about the whereabouts of the daughter? Here's my theory after I think about it for a while. We know that Gibson has noted the daughter's disappearance. I think that Gibson, being a clever spy, I'm going to give him credit for being a clever spy, he goes to the London police. He says, I need you guys to go over to the Lawrences and ask them about their daughter, and I'm going to come with you. So that at this point, he's thinking maybe he can get some information or some confirmation of his suspicions from the Lawrences without having to, like, step out of the shadows and reveal to them literally, like, hey, I'm a spy.
Right. And,
But
and and that way he doesn't have to reveal too much information. Some pretty get some spy points for that one. That's a really good point, Todd. I didn't even really pick up on that.
I think that was good because I was the very first time I was watching the movie, I was like, well, of course, I'm watching the movie, I'm taking my notes, and I'm asking questions like, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. And I remember the first thing I wrote down is, why are the London police talking to Bob about this? I mean, it would be different if Bob and Jill came home and went to the police and said, hey, somebody took our daughter. But they didn't do that. So yeah. So I think Gibson was trying to pull the strings, and he was trying to pull a fast one. But since Bob held firm in the face of the police investigation, now Gibson needs to actually play his card or put his cards on the table.
Well, yeah, so the call comes in, and I think there's like a bit of a conversation that the phone companies will never tell you where the call comes from. Gibson then immediately picks up the phone, dials 0 presumably, and says, "This is special. Get me." What did he say?
He actually says, "Yeah, I think actually I got the quote. Let me lay it on you. I assume he dials 0. He dials a single digit." Remember, and this is the rotary phones, right? He doesn't dial a phone number. So I'm presuming he dials 0. Or actually, I don't necessarily want to presume that because I don't want to say that I know how phones worked in London in 1934. Yeah. But it's a rotary phone. So he dials 0 or whatever the British old-timey version of that is. And he just speaks right into the phone, and he says, "Give me special, please, quickly. This is G speaking. Code name. Haha. Tradecraft point. +1 spy point for being G. For being G. Were you listening? Where did the last call come from?"
Which they probably pre-planned to start tapping because they were already aware of like these events that kind of transpired in Switzerland. So they probably already pre-planned to kind of tap their incoming calls and outgoing calls. So definitely some spy points right there.
Yeah, because like at first what I thought was, wouldn't it be cool if like you had a system in place where like you had a special code or something where you could just pick up any phone in the world where a call had just been made and like say the right magic words into it.
Right.
Right. But that wouldn't make sense because that would like there's not somebody listening to every call that's going on everywhere.
Right, exactly.
So they must have had agents on the line, like just basically listening to all the phone calls that are coming in or out.
Uh-huh.
And Gibson can just pick it up and speak these magic words that gets him, like he says, "Give me special, please."
Right, exactly.
Whatever special is.
Yeah.
That's a code for the operator or whoever, like, maybe they have a person there that's like the agent is taking the place of the operator. But yeah, really cool. So they're watching the Lawrences, and like you mentioned too, like obviously the bad guys are also watching the Lawrences.
Yes, they are.
We're in a world of shadows and observation and surveillance, and Lawrence is being watched all the time.
Yep.
Very cool. Very spy movie-ish.
Yeah. Very, very much so.
So during the scene at the home, we're introduced also to another character named Clive. I mean, he seems to be a family friend, maybe an uncle. He might be Bob's brother. I'm not sure.
Well, they kind of made a joke that he's kind of an uncle. So he's probably a really good friend, but he could actually be an uncle. It was just kind of weird who he was. We're not really sure kind of exactly what he was, but they made like a joke about like, well, yeah, you're pretty much an uncle at this point.
Okay. Right. So Clive joins Bob in tracking down the details in the note because somehow like the Lawrences have decided like they need to solve this mystery on their own without the help. So after Gibson leaves or something, I forget exactly how it leaves, but one word or another, Clive joins Bob in tracking down the details of the note. And the note, again, started with, oh, wait. That's right. Remember, back to the phone call, right? Which was traced.
Right.
Gibson, all he was able to get was the call came from a public phone somewhere in Wapping, a district in London. And
Right.
he gives orders, I think, right, to put plainclothesmen on every corner in Wapping.
Call Scotland Yard, said man on every corner in Wapping. I
Right.
believe is
Yeah. And actually, that's why that freaks after Gibson leaves. That's what freaks Bob out, right? He's thinking like, oh no. He apparently doesn't have much faith in the plainclothesness of Scotland Yard. He
Yeah.
thinks that the villains are gonna instantly notice that there's a cop on every corner,
Right.
and assume that means that the Lawrences gave up the information to Gibson and killed their daughter.
Right.
And so being freaked out like that, that's why they think like we've got to go to Wapping right now. And I don't exactly know what their plan is, but they're the way they prosecute the plan is they're going to Wapping and they're going to try to find G. Barbour, which they do.
Right, they do.
Yeah, and G.
I
Barbour,
think that's the dentist, right?
that turns out to be a dentist in the district of Wapping. So definitely they're putting the right strings between the right tacks on their little figure it out board.
Right.
They go to the dentist. They pretend he's got something wrong with his mouth, so that the dentist, just to get in there. And the dentist asks Bob some questions while he's in the chair, and Bob, I'm not sure why, but he lies about it in a way that makes the dentist suspicious enough to try to knock Bob out with his creepy sleeping gas, with his creepy dentist gas.
Yeah.
Which is honestly a pretty creepy scene, and I liked it a lot.
It was very creepy. It had a very, very creepy feel to it.
It was
especially it was black and white.
Black and white, kind of claustrophobic. Like a lot of this film is very, like I thought, very claustrophobic.
Right.
In a lot of parts. Not so much the Switzerland parts, but definitely like when we get into like the world of spies, it always seems to be in these like tight little closed rooms, and especially this one, the dentist's office is like dark and like just kind of. It's not well lit. The dentist just has this one huge bright light, that he's shining into the patient's face, and that leaves all these like really, a bright light can leave a lot of like dark shadows all around.
Yes.
But Bob turns the table on the dentist and knocks him out with his own fucking sleeping gas.
Yeah.
And then he hears like there's someone coming in. He's like, oh shit. And he does something really clever. It's not really spycraft, but it is pretty clever. He quickly flips the position, puts the dentist on the chair, puts on his dentist jacket, puts on his dentist glasses, shines the light at the door. Very clever. So that the person
so they won't see him as they walk in, right?
Yeah, so they'll be harder to see. And just basically pretends to be the dentist. And the person that comes in, we see that it's Ramon, and we see that he's talking to Abbott. Remember Abbott? We still haven't mentioned that Abbott is played by Peter Lorre, which is, he's the best performance in the film, I think. This is great work by Peter Lorre. But so now we as the audience, this is the first time we've realized there's a connection between Ramon, the sharpshooter from Switzerland, and Abbott, the little guy with the chiming watch. And Bob gets this information also because Abbott's watch chimes, and he hears it, and he heard that exact same chime in Switzerland.
That's right. And so he kind of pieced together that it was that same guy that they had seen. And this is the meeting between Ramon and Abbott planning the assassination, correct?
They don't really plan it out. I think their discussion is Ramon's kind of bitching a little bit about like how he needed to be snuck into London. And Abbott's just like, shut the fuck up. You'll do whatever I say you need to do.
Right.
And I'll go ahead and give Abbott -5 spy points for owning a watch with a super, identifiable chime that just goes off at random times.
Yeah.
I think that's -5 spy points, right?
Definitely -5 spy points on that one.
Okay. Yeah. And afterwards, Clive and Bob follow Abbott and Ramon as they leave the dentist, cross the street, and go into a weird fucking church.
Very weird. And I think it's some kind of cult or something. It's definitely like some sort of religious sanctioned center type of thing.
So yeah, this creepy cult church. It's they're some kind of sun worshippers with some kind of I don't know, weird rites. It's very culty. Doesn't seem to be like a legit religion. And Clive and Bob sneak in, and there's a sermon being given. They kind of try to hide out in the back, but someone there seems to recognize that they don't belong there. And, just through some manipulation, they kind of, basically, Clive gets hypnotized. I mean, they kind of say, like, if you're here for the first time, you need to do the thing. And so Clive gets kind of, manipulated into submitting to hypnotism, and he gets knocked out. Most of the church goers leave, and so now Bob's left alone in the church with just a handful of people, sinister people, and his friend is incapacitated.
Right.
And this sets the stage for what, Dave?
The greatest chair fight of all time.
It is the greatest chair fight of all time. Why do we have a chair fight here, Dave?
Well, apparently they didn't want to use guns.
Someone pulled out a gun. Yeah. Someone pulled out a gun. But someone else is like, no.
Yeah, I think it was the head priestess lady that was running the sermon, warns them, don't use any guns. They'll hear it, and the police will show up.
And so I'm not... Yeah, go ahead.
So instead, they have to fight with these chairs. And I know, Todd, that you want to talk about this.
I really do. I don't remember who throws the first chair. Now, again, this chapel, it's a small place. Again, it's another kind of somewhat claustrophobic spot. It's not like a huge church. It's like it's the size of like someone's large-ish living room. And everyone was sitting in these like flimsy little wooden
folding chairs.
I'm not even sure if they had folding chair technology.
Yeah. This is pre-folding
at this point.
Technology.
But there's these light little wooden chairs, and I'm not sure who it is that throws the first one, but as soon as that first chair gets thrown, it is fucking on.
Yeah.
Everyone grabs a chair and just starts hurling it. Bob is throwing chairs at the bad guys. The bad guys are throwing chairs back at him. The chairs are splintering like into pieces, like as they're hitting each other. Like nobody seems to be actually hurt.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of like a challenge or whatever,
it's almost
a
like
friendly match or whatever.
It's almost like a food fight, but with chairs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, but you know what they say in Boondocks? Anytime a chair gets thrown, that's just the end of it, and there's gonna be a fight.
They start throwing the mangled remnants of chairs back at each other when they run out of like fully like built functional chairs.
We're not even at this point where they've broken all the chairs, right? And so they start sending out like the splintered pieces for whatever reason, and they're just like exchanging these like chair throws.
It is easily. I'm not saying. I mean, I know we're hyping this up a bit, but it is actually a kind of a cool scene. It is probably, I think, the most memorable part of this movie.
Absolutely.
That and the fact that Peter Lorre fucking rocks.
Yeah, he's definitely amazing.
Bob keeps yelling at Clive to wake up, wake up, wake up. And he's still smoking. I love this. By the way, everyone smokes in this movie. Constantly.
Yeah.
And a chair fight is not, I repeat, not an excuse to stop smoking your cigarette. He's still got his cigarette in his mouth. I don't even remember him lighting the motherfucker. Wait a second. I just thought of this. He did not come into the church with a lit cigarette, did he?
I don't know. All I know is I don't think I've seen anybody light a cigarette in that movie. Everybody's just smoking.
Oh, yeah. No, they just have them.
Yeah. It's just a part of life, you know?
Yeah.
Everybody smokes, you know?
In the movie poster for this movie, the movie poster, did you see it? Yeah, it's this weird, like, ghoulishly green artwork of Peter Lorre with, like, half-lidded eyes, and you can see this weird scar on his head, and he's just got this cigarette just dangling out of his, like, fat red lips.
Yeah.
And he just looks like he's just, I don't know. He almost looks like he's like enjoying that cigarette like way too much.
Yeah. That was kind of a creepy poster. Yeah, but I think it's funny that just like somebody's smoking in every scene. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go ahead and spoil it real quick. I got to, like, since we're talking about the smoking right now, is Peter Lorre at the end of this movie, he's going to get shot to death. He has to, because he's the bad guy.
Right.
He's still smoking. Like, he hides behind a door. The police have come in to the place. The jig is up. It's the end of the movie. His last stand, his last move is to hide behind a door and hope they don't notice him when they come in the room.
Right.
Does he put his cigarette out?
No.
Nah. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die smoking. That's That's Peter Lorre's thing. That's everyone's thing. Cigarettes for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was jealous. Yeah, they were even smoking inside the chalet at Switzerland. They made sure to start smoking before they went outside, just to make us extra jealous.
But again, yeah, I just want to underline this again. Like, I don't remember him lighting the cigarette. I mean, maybe I'll go back and maybe I'll be wrong, but maybe he lights, like, we don't see it, but he lights the cigarette just before the chair fight starts.
Yeah.
Hell, maybe he lights the cigarette during the chair fight.
Yeah.
Moving on. During the fight, Ramon comes in, right? Now, Ramon, again, is our heavy. You know, like Abbott is our mastermind, and Ramon is the heavy in this movie. So he comes into the fight, and he says, fuck this with the chairs. I'm going to go do a wrestling match with Bob. And so they start wrestling, because I guess they're out of chairs. And while they're wrestling, Bob notices that Ramon's got a concert ticket sticking out of his pocket. And the concert ticket says, it probably, I'll bet you it has, because remember the note that like is the whole point or the impetus of this whole movie said March 21st. I'll bet you well, actually, isn't it already March 21st? All right, never mind that. But he definitely sees that the concert ticket says Albert Hall, and he puts that together with the Louis Bernard note that said A Hall.
Right.
So now, okay, he's still fighting, right? But I guess he's doing some processing too. He's thinking, what is he thinking? What all information does he have? He knows that there is a note that was very important that said A Hall. He knows there's an assassination plot. He knows that for some reason, some motherfucker that he only barely met in Switzerland last week is suddenly in a church with him plotting something with some other motherfucker that he just really only barely met in Switzerland.
Right.
So I guess he puts this all together in his head and says Albert Hall is really important. Maybe he even thinks, I don't know. No, he can't. I mean, he can't in the middle of a fight, even also being making some kind of connection that like, hey, this guy's a marksman. There's an assassination plot. Here's a concert which matches a note that a Frenchman hid in a shaving brush. I don't know what all his thought process is, but somehow he manages to wake Clive up and help Clive
Did
get
he
out.
throw a piece of the chair at Clive or something?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I
he threw
think
like
a stray
yeah.
a stray chair finally manages to actually impact on Clive, wakes him up. Bob gets Clive up through the window, and I'm not sure the exact order of operations here, but Clive gets out the window. Bob does not. Bob gets captured. But Bob's final, like, bit of, like trying to get this movie to a positive conclusion, save his daughter, tells Clive to send Jill to the Albert Hall.
Right, which it's kind of weird. Why send the wife? Why not just send Clive over to Albert Hall?
I do think that's a bit odd. Yeah, it's a little janky because I think the smart play is just like, don't call my wife, my grieving, prone to dizzy spells and fainting.
Yeah, wife. Steady.
Yeah, send Clive.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're gonna try to send Jill. Now I'll mention that in the 1934 version, Bob, like I mentioned, he gets captured here. He remains a captive for the rest of the film, and he really doesn't do much of anything else for the rest of the film. He does do one thing. He overhears once he's like in their hands.
Right.
Ramon is then Abbott calls Ramon over to explain exactly how the assassination plot is going to work. And they seem to go, this is just a minus I think on the plausibility of the film. They seem to go to elaborate lengths to make sure that Bob overhears them.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they literally position him right in this one spot and then talk about it right in front of him.
Yeah. There's some minus spy points right there.
There's some huge minus spy points, and it's also completely unnecessary because Bob doesn't actually, like, it's unnecessary even as a janky plot device because Bob doesn't actually do anything with that information.
No, he doesn't, yeah.
So it was just to make sure that we, as the audience, understand the assassination plot. And the assassination plot, basically, it revolves around, they're going to be at a concert, the French official's going to be there. There's a huge, like, climactic point in the music where there's going to be a massive cymbal crash, and that's when you do your shot, because that way no one will hear the shot.
And then our shooter could run away and into the night.
Yep, pretty much. I guess we're ready to head to the concert. I just got a little bit of trivia here, which I thought was interesting. In the original, there's remember like the whole thing where Clive gets hypnotized. In the original script, it was going to be Bob and Jill going to the church together.
Right.
And it was going to be Jill that was going to get hypnotized, and she was going to get hypnotized and like engrammed or whatever into being the assassin.
Oh, that would have been a much better story.
I think it's a much better story.
Yeah.
Apparently in 1934, Alfred Hitchcock decided that it would strain plausibility and the audience wouldn't go for it.
Right, which is kind of confusing because there were a lot of movies at that time that used hypnosis in that way. And later, I think there's some conspiracy theories about the MK Ultra program being able to actually accomplish that with would-be assassins. But a lot of those movies back then in the black and whites, there was all kinds of weird hypnosis situations. But they made hypnosis look way more overpowered than it actually is.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I think that would have made for a much better story. But now we have a thriller of trying to stop the wife who's hypnotized and get her out of legal trouble.
Oh,
and
yeah, it becomes
a spy thriller.
It becomes much worse too. Like now Bob has lost his daughter and his wife.
Right.
then he would really feel isolated. It feels like the clamps would really be on him.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish they had stuck with that too. That's definitely the way they would do it if they remade this movie again.
Oh, for sure.
I think that if they remade this movie for some reason in 2020, I mean, a lot would change, but I definitely think that something, well, maybe not. Maybe we're kind of over hypnosis now in the modern day.
Well, no, but like I was saying, there's a bunch of conspiracy theories that the MK Ultra program had combined hypnosis with Pavlov's law, and there are some people who believed some of the mass shooters or actually people that assassinated people had gone through exactly what that scenario we just discussed. Like some people believe the man that murdered John Lennon was possibly under some sort of mind control type of situation.
Wow, I never heard that.
Yeah, like supposedly the assassin just read Catcher in the Rye, and for those of you that have read Catcher in the Rye, you know the whole point of the book is that everybody's fake. So he finishes reading this book and goes, "Everybody's fake. The Beatles are fake. John Lennon's fake. I need to go kill John Lennon." You know, like these are supposedly the steps that he took. So a lot of it seems kind of weird, but I mean, he could have just been, mentally ill, like that they claim, but supposedly he doesn't remember ever. Anyway, this is getting way too much into conspiracy theory.
No, that's cool though. That's cool though. I enjoyed that. I'd never heard about that stuff. But yeah, we could head to the concert.
Okay, sounds good.
I think we covered the church pretty well. Jill gets sent by Clive to the hall. It's weird here, like she doesn't actually know anything at this point, right? Like, okay, we know what's gonna happen. Or we've seen the movie. We know that what's gonna happen is that she's gonna go to the hall. She's going to notice a gun muzzle behind a curtain up in a balcony,
Right.
slowly aiming toward the target of the assassination. She looks up, she looks back, she kind of figures out like who is going to get shot. I'm not sure she was actually in the room when Gibson described the implications of the assassination. I'm not even sure she knows there's an assassination, like that she comes into the hall thinking about an assassination in her head. But she just knows that for some reason her husband said, "Get there now."
Right.
She pieces things together. The music swells. It gets a little more intense. It gets more intense. I mean, it's supposedly like a wonderful set piece of this film. We are gonna later talk about how much better the 1956 version is of this scene. But I guess in 1934, this is a people look at it, film goers see it, and they think this is a fucking great scene. Alfred Hitchcock, he's done it again.
Yeah.
But the music swells, and just before the cymbals are about to clash, remember, she doesn't know about the cymbals, but I guess her hunch or her tension like builds up so much that she can't help it. She can't hold it in anymore, and she screams right before the cymbals clash, and right
when
before
the music kind of drops, so I guess she's a little bit more amplified.
Right. I mean, there's definitely like emotion built up in this scene. She's terrified of what's going on. She doesn't know like where her husband's gone off to. I don't think Clive gave her a bunch of information except like get to Albert Hall right away. She's worried about her daughter. The music is like kind of being a surrogate for us as the audience of the immense anxiety that she has. And at that moment where the music suddenly pauses, as it's been building up, she can't hold it in anymore, and she just releases it in a scream, which is enough to throw the assassin's bullet off. And so I think now, I remember in the 56 version, not so sure in the 34 version, but I think the French dignitary is just flesh wounded instead of being killed.
It's just a flesh wound, which apparently is a British thing, because that I was like, Monty Python, but they just kept saying flesh wound at the end of the movie. So I think that's like a British thing.
No, that's just a regular thing. But Monty Python did very much popularize
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I've just never heard it outside of Monty Python. Like, we usually hear like grazing or something like that. But in this movie they're like, oh, it was just a flesh wound. Like, so I wonder if that's why Monty Python made a joke about it. It might be like a thing of it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trivia that the piece of music that's used here, I think it's called the Storm Cloud Cantata, and it was specially what's the word for it? What's the word for it when you hire someone to produce? Well, anyways, Alfred Hitchcock hired a composer specifically to write this piece of music for this movie.
Right.
And it's the same piece of music that's used in the 56 version. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to that.
Right.
And then, so the assassination plot's been foiled. Bob's still a captive.
Right.
We move on to our finale. Our finale is basically the cops rushing the church, where the villains, I don't know if we mentioned this before, but their whole headquarters is in like the upstairs of the church.
Right. Yeah.
And the cops come out of the woodwork. Somehow they've figured out that this is where the villains are. I couldn't exactly figure out how they figured that out.
Well, yeah. Well, Mrs. Lawrence spotted Ramon running out and jumping into a car and alerted the police or the security at the concert hall. So I followed him to the church. Why he would go there?
That's a dumb move. Minus 10 spy points.
Yeah.
Minus 10 spy points for Ramon.
Yeah.
You don't go back to the... Yeah, no. You burn it. You burn it all. You disappear.
Yeah.
You catch a bus.
Yeah. You jump into a bush somewhere, You
get your payment later.
Yeah.
A big gunfight ensues. I don't know I guess we didn't mention, we might have glossed over it a little, but remember there are like a certain number of bad guys that stuck around in the church.
Yeah.
Right.
About like 7 something.
There's a total of like maybe 7 bad guys hanging out with Abbott in the upstairs of the church at this point. They've all got guns. The police show up with guns. They start shooting through windows. It's a big, huge gunfight. Apparently, it's all like based on. You remember Heat? You remember the movie Heat?
I remember its existence.
Oh,
I don't think I've seen it since I was like 6 or something.
Oh, really? Wow. We gotta talk about that movie, even if we don't do it in a podcast, which I would love to do, by the way.
Yeah.
But you need to see that movie again. It's one of my favorites of all time. There's a huge gunfight between bank robbers and the LAPD in Heat, which was based on like an actual incident.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was an actual incident where the cops were so like the bank robbers had shown up with fucking like assault weapons, and the cops were apparently at this time, like the cops didn't run around with assault weapons like right now.
Is this the North Hollywood shootout?
It very well might be.
Okay, because that sounds just like the North Hollywood shootout, right?
Okay, I don't know if you've noticed, but right now, motorcycle cops in LA are rolling around with fucking assault weapons, like lashed to their bikes.
Yep. They have M4s on the back of their bike, or AR-15s sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes it's different. That's always what I check is like, what kind of weapon is this cop got?
Yeah.
I love that because I don't know. I would not. I don't love cops, but I do love cop motorcycles. Please don't let the fact that I love Nazi motorcycles indicate to you that I have any sympathy whatsoever for Nazis. But I mean, come on, their motorcycles are fucking cool.
Yeah.
So anyways,
sidecar.
at at that time, I know that I don't mind that this is a segue because it's fun for me.
Yeah.
But at that time, the LA cops weren't rolling around with assault weapons, so they had to go to gun stores. They had to go to local gun stores, and what do you call it when you not confiscate, not commission, but what do you do when you're the
commandeer?
Yeah. They commandeered
Well, the other thing is
from local gun stores.
British police have never really carried firearms. Like these are your kind of like street bobbies or whatever.
Ever?
And, no, it wasn't until recently, I think within the last like 15 years. And this is hilarious because this goes against all the gun control advocates. The gun violence in England got so much of a problem, the police had to actually be armed for the first time in like the existence of England.
Okay.
The police have never been armed. So they had to go in this movie. It's just a bunch of like, street cops or like Bobby type guys from Scotland Yard, and they're getting shot at. So they had to go to a local gun store to get
like the head cop. He has to give orders. Like he has to make a special decision and send someone like, hey, you need to go to the gun store and get a bunch of rifles for our cops for this fight.
Exactly.
So in that way, it was like that's why I brought up the heat situation because like it was like this kind of the same thing. But apparently this gunfight. So this is it's like a parallel of a parallel because the scene in Heat was based on a real event. This scene in this movie is also based on a real event, on a real cop shootout that happened in Alfred Hitchcock's neighborhood when he was a child.
Oh, wow.
Cool, huh?
Very cool.
But other than that, I mean, it's, this is a podcast about spy stuff. There's really no spy stuff left in this movie. We just end it with a standard shootout. The bad guys drop one by one. They take out some cops. There is like one little piece. Again, not spy stuff, but we got to mention that Ramon takes Betty, the girl, up to the top of the church, up to the roof of the church. In classic villain fashion, when a villain is on the ropes, he always has a natural instinct to find height. It's just like instinctual. It's like when a cat is pregnant and she knows that she's gonna give birth soon, like she hides in a corner. She finds a secret place in a corner. It's instinctual. For a villain in a movie, when the chips are down, you need to get up to a high place. It's just a fucking rule. But in this case, he's miscalculated because Jill is with the police and there are rifles around, and Jill is a fucking marksman, which has been established at the very beginning of the movie. And the cops are like, the guy, the head cop or something, gives the cop with the rifle, he says like, shoot that guy, shoot him. And the guy looks through the sights and says, I can't. I might hit the girl. Jill says, I got this shit.
Yeah.
She takes the rifle from the cop. She shoots Ramon. It is so uncharacteristic when we think about, like, even now we're talking about like the empowerment of women in popular culture, like popular media, like what they do in TVs and movies, and I think it's improving at a good clip. Like, I'm really happy to see like movies like Mission Impossible. I think it was Rogue Nation was my favorite one. The chick in that was a badass. I love seeing the fact that Charlize Theron in the most recent Mad Max movie, total badass. I love movies like Atomic Blonde. I love, this about me, I love kick-ass chicks.
Yeah.
This is 1934, and she totally gets the moment. The lady gets the moment of the most badassery. Her husband just gets shot in the back and just manages to survive.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. It's worth noting. But yeah, and that's how 1934 version of The Man Who Knew Too Much ends.
and Ramon was the one she was in the shooting contest with, and she vowed to, like, beat him one day in competition, and he says, "I live for that day."
I'll tell you exactly. We will have another contest, and he says, "I will live for that day." Good catch, because what he didn't know he was really saying is, "I will live until that day."
Yep. and she definitely gets her payback.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I think that was very cute. Yeah.
So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna rate the movie. We're gonna give 1 to 5 stars. We're each gonna give our own individual rating and reasons for those ratings. I think Dave feels the same way. We're not trying to be full-on movie critics here. We're not trying to be Roger Ebert. Yep, I have had a few beers. We're not trying to be Roger Ebert or Roger Ebert. But we're going to give you our 1 to 5 stars on just how much we personally like this movie.
So the 34, as far as the tradecraft, was a little bit more tight knit, but I kind of felt like the production value or the story was kind of choppy. Even though there's these phenomenal moments in the movie, I wasn't blown away with it too much. I think the cinematography, or I guess the direction, visually, I think it was better than the 56. But in general, uh, it felt like one of those old movies where it was just like, here's the story, credits roll, and everybody goes home happy. So I'm gonna give this one 3 stars for the 34. But as a movie perspective, I think the Spycraft was better in the 34 than in the 56.
All right, cool. I'm with you. I liked the 1934, The Man Who Knew Too Much. One thing that factors into my personal rating is, like, do I want to see this movie again? And I think I do. I don't need to see it again like right away, but I think it's rewatchable, and I think it's majorly rewatchable because of Peter Lorre.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because I really do, I like the chair fight.
Yeah, the chair fight. The chair fight alone, it makes it rewatchable.
It's memorable. No, and the dentist scene, it was pretty good. So, like, I mean, it's not a movie I'm gravitating toward, like, as one of my favorites or something. But if I'm gonna sit down and watch an old movie, and I do like watching myself some old movies.
Yeah.
If I rated, like, the top 5 cable channels of all time, I've never been much of a TV watcher. I watch very little TV, but there are some channels the Cartoon Network brought me a lot of good stuff. Comedy Central brought me a lot of good stuff. Another channel that I've just always really held dear to my heart, Turner Classics.
Yeah.
You just sit down, you watch these black and whites, and you really see, like, what movie making was like in the age before special effects.
Right.
In the age before really advanced cinematography.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, there's so much of it that's so much more tied into character development, because that's really the only thing they have to work with.
Right. Well, a lot of movies back then were just adapted from plays.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna go 2.5.
2.5. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 2.5. It's rewatchable. It's worthy. If you are looking for an old timey black and white movie to watch,
Mm-hmm.
this should be on your list.
That
if you're not in,
timey feel,
if you're not into it, like, take a pass.
Yeah.
Now, so we have the everyman as a spy. We still haven't seen a film with a spy hero. And in our research, Dave, I was so surprised. I really was super surprised. I don't think he really shows up until
James Bond.
Until James Bond.
Yeah.
62.
Wow.
I mean, it kind of boggles my mind a little. Like, I gotta jump into this here. Like Louis Bernard, who, I mean, he dies within, I didn't check, but I think he's dead within 6 minutes of the fucking 1934 film.
Right.
But we have a British secret agent posing as a champion skier, globetrotting, right?
Yep.
Gathering secret information about enemy plots that have like huge, like world-shaking implications if the plots go through. He's dancing with other people's wives.
Yeah.
In a tuxedo.
Yeah.
I didn't see him drink a martini, but this motherfucker is like one and getting shot at too by enemy spies. This guy is one martini and one fucking like watch gadget away from being James Bond.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you.
You have all the elements in 1934. Oh, and by the way, apparently the guy that played Louis Bernard in the 1934 version, like totally famous actor. Like he was, he was totally like a guy that at the time, like women were like, you know, their hearts were throbbing over. You know, he was like a badass hunk. So he's got everything. It takes the world or the world of cinema. You know, like it's weird. Like film was invented in like I don't know these numbers or these years, but like movies were being made for like decades before the close-up was fucking invented.
Yeah.
And it changed everything. And it's so weird. Like you could have all the elements of like this guy should be our hero.
Yeah.
But as we're going to see in later episodes, it takes 28 years for this to occur. And that's going to be a focus, I think, of our next series where we talk about James Bond and how he fits in on that.
And that's the end of our show. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at spies_like_us. Visit us on our website at www.spieslikeus.net. You know, find out about upcoming episodes. Also, what will really help us out is if you give us a review on wherever you found our podcast, either on iTunes or your Android app or YouTube or wherever you listen to us. Even if you didn't like the show, just give us a review. It'll help us, give us feedback so we can make the show better. And it can also help other people who haven't found the show yet find out about us. Hey, Moira, initiate Protocol 9.
Protocol 9 initiated. This podcast will self-destruct in 20 seconds. The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautics, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.